Hi, Jen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this interview to accompany the case study that we did on the HOPE program. I'm Makiyah Moody with Piana Consulting, as you know, and we are really excited to have a deeper look into the experience that your organization, the HOPE program, and Sustainable South Bronx experienced when they merged. And so to get us started, if you could just tell us a little bit about the HOPE program. What's your elevator pitch?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Makiyah, for doing this. We are eternally grateful for the support that we got from Piana while going through the exploration, and then also really excited and grateful for the opportunity to 3 years out reflect back on the process and lessons learned and the ultimate impact. So thank you. The HOPE program. We are a workforce development organization. We are about to celebrate our 35th anniversary. So we have a long history and track record of working with folks who come from different backgrounds and are struggling to get back into the workplace, whether that is from homelessness or history of incarceration or history of substance abuse or low educational attainment or many, many other barriers, mental health issues. And we run work training programs, some that are in the classroom and some that are hands-on to prepare people for the workforce. Then we also help them to get their first internship, sometimes their first job in a while, and sometimes their first job ever. And then we have a saying, when you're hope for life. And what that means is everyone we work with becomes part of the HOPE family. And so when they have something they want to celebrate, or when they're struggling with something, they can come back. And we have retention associates and advancement counselors that can continue to work with them and help them to get over what they're struggling with or to achieve that next milestone in building a sustainable career. So we're really proud of the work we do. And really proud of the holistic model. We address the full person. So rather than just do, interviewing and resume prep and dress for success, we dig into what are the factors that led someone to get into the situation in the first place. We embed mental health and work wellness services throughout all of our programming, and we allow people the opportunity to reflect on what they're interested in and where their aptitude and where their passion is, so that they can build a career that is going to be something that they're proud of, as well as allowing them to provide for their family and give back to their community.
Wow, 35 years of impact is really impressive.
Yes, I am not the founder, and I joined the HOPE program 7 years ago as executive director, but I joined because it has always had a stellar reputation for treating the people we serve with respect and with dignity, and achieving incredible outcomes. Nearly 80% of the people that we serve 1 year later are still working. And when you look at national benchmarking surveys of similar organizations, that 1 year retention number really stands out as being in the top decile.
Wow, that's incredible. So 3 years ago, the HOPE program and Sustainable South Bronx decided to join forces, and you created a parent subsidiary structure in order to combine programming, operations, etc. As you reflect on those last 3 years, can you talk about what have been the highlights since you merged?
Sure. So 3 years and 3 months or something right now since the official merger happened, October 1st, 2015. And I think some of the things that are highlights for me, I mean, the first is I knew that we came together as an organization, we were going to be able to impact more lives. I did not anticipate how quickly we would be able to, for lack of a better way to describe it, make 1 + 1 = 3. Like combined, organizationally combined, we haven't just been able to maintain the number of people that we are serving in both locations, but we've really been able to increase that number and increase the impact. And so to me, this work is all about lifting people out of poverty and into sustainable careers. And we do that at a much larger scale 3 years later than either organization was doing it alone. So that's by far the biggest highlight. But other highlights have been, we're a larger organization, so we've gotten to know lots of new people through Sustainable South Bronx, and then people that we've hired to support the larger organization. And there are so many incredible people out there working to lift vulnerable populations through workforce training, through education, and through actually greening New York City. And so the opportunity to meet and bring onto the team lots of incredible people has also been a highlight. And then also just getting to know another community. Hope program was primarily based in Brooklyn. It served folks from all 5 boroughs, but was based in Brooklyn for all of its history pretty much. And Sustainable South Bronx has been based in the Bronx for all of its history, which is about 15 years. And so getting to know the Bronx community, we moved locations back into Hunts Point, where Sustainable South Bronx was originally founded, and getting to know that community and the strength and the resilience and the community mindedness of the folks there has really been a highlight as well.
Great. So it sounds like with the partnership with Sustainable South Bronx, you were able to expand your geographic footprint to impact more people that needed the supports and the development that you're providing as an organization, and also get more, integrated within a new community that can then support the work of the merged entity. So all of that sounds lovely and wonderful. I'm curious about, unintended consequences of the merger, or things you didn't expect as you were going through the negotiations process, that when you look back on them, you wish you would have known X.
It's such a great question. So I think a couple things. One, neither organization had ever gone through anything like this before. So we were, doing it for the first time. And frankly, in 2014, when we were doing the negotiation, in early 2015, there was some literature on it and there were some examples. But I also felt like with the guidance of La Piana, we were figuring it out. And so some of the things, like we spent a year looking under the hood of each other's nonprofits. There was a subcommittee put together. It was made up of 3 Hope board members, 3 SSBX board members, 2 Hope staff members, me and the director of development, and 2 Sustainable South Bronx staff members, their executive director and their director of development. And so we met probably twice a month for 3 hours each evening for 6 to 8 months, diving into organizational capacity, legal due diligence, financial systems, programming strategy, org chart. Like we really did deep dive. What are the options for the legal structure? All of these sort of things. And I think it was a great exercise. But there's some things that when you're presenting, your best self to another part of the subcommittee, that get glossed over. And so one thing that we were a little bit surprised at is we were really interested. One of the reasons we were interested in Sustainable South Bronx was the social enterprise component of it. And I think that because it was struggling as we were going through the due diligence and the exploration process, by the time the 2 entities came together, it really needed a lot of work and a lot of care and a lot more resources than we had initially anticipated. So something we probably could have done even more due diligence on, but has ultimately 3 years later worked to our advantage, because we really got to build on what was working great, but also kind of forge a new path. And we did a rebranding and have a new name and it has a new identity, and we secured some really interesting funding sources for it. So that was one thing that, in the beginning I was like, why didn't we know that or know as much about that? But it worked out well. Another thing that happened during the process is, so I was close colleagues with the executive director of Sustainable South Bronx from a couple of years before, when we had been put in a new executive director kind of networking group. And so we had a lot of trust, and we had great relationship, and we're very transparent throughout the process about how this all was going to shake out. And right from the very beginning, it was kind of understood that Hope would be the parent organization. However, all along the plan was that the executive director, Michael, who's wonderful, would stay on board for 6 months or so to help with the transition. Due to some changes in his personal life, he and his family ended up moving to Seattle right around the time that the actual partnership went into effect. And so I thought I'd have Michael around kind of like with me in the beginning, and I had him around, but from afar. Again, it was not exactly how it was planned. It worked out fine. And I actually think from, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, I think from kind of the challenging parts of this is integrating two organizational cultures. And it might have actually, in the end, been easier that he was still an expert, but he was a little bit removed. But that, again, something we weren't planning for.
Okay. Yeah, there's so much in what you just shared. I'm curious about social enterprise as well as cultural integration. So let's take cultural integration first, since that's where you just left off. So I know from our merger experiences with nonprofits that trying to bring together two distinct cultures is almost like, when you marry into someone else's family. And so there's things that are spoken, things that are unspoken. There's just a way of being that you sometimes have to figure out, how do I make sense of this? And so I'm wondering what your approach was for cultural integration, since you had two distinct sets of individuals and staffs in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. How did you go about, I guess, bringing together those key people in making the merger successful?
Yeah. So, and the reason I even brought up that part in the last question is because you kind of think when you're going through the due diligence process that, oh, it's going to be the legal stuff or the financial stuff or the data stuff that's hard to integrate. You don't necessarily realize how hard it's going to be, like the people stuff. And so the other things happen kind of much more smoothly and much more quickly. And then integrating the two cultures, we actually did acknowledge kind of very early on that it was going to be something we needed to focus on. And so we applied for a pro bono day with a team of Goldman Sachs analysts to kind of unpack that. And we brought senior members of both the Hope team and the SSBX team together to talk about, like, what are people's fears? What are people worried about? How can we reassure folks? And so we did spend a good 8 hours with experts in change management from Goldman Sachs unpacking that sort of stuff. So I felt like we went in a little bit more prepared than if we had not done that. But it's hard. And I think from day one, communication is key. Transparency is key. Fairness is key. And fairness not meaning everybody gets the same thing, but everyone gets what they need. And really thinking through what that means. And then I think, from my point of view, the thing that was most important or most valuable that we did is, even though it was a parent-subsidiary relationship, we did not ever assume that it was like, okay, Hope's culture or bust. We really realized from day one there were valuable parts of each organization's kind of way they had been functioning, and that we wanted to kind of pollinate those positive parts in both sites, Bronx and Brooklyn. And so, A, acknowledging that, B, being very intentional about what works great in each place, and then trying to kind of like, replicate that in the other place was helpful. And then doing a lot of kind of like the first day, October 1st, 2015, we did a virtual toast with like sparkling apple cider, and we had everybody like Skype together, like all of the Brooklyn gathered in one office, all of the Bronx gathered in another office, and we toasted to the new, newly formed joint organization. And from that, and then for the first month and a half or so, we had a standing conference call on the calendar for everybody in the organization, like for 15 minutes, just to give them updates on anything that had happened. Hey, was there a press release sent out? Hey, was there a new staff person hired? And I think we originally put it on for like a month and a half. And then we didn't even need that thing every single day after that long, but it started the pattern of like, let's share things system wide. And still, and just to be really transparent and vulnerable, 3 years out, there are still some times where people will refer to things in ways that don't reflect that they understand how integrated the two programs are. But really from a staffing standpoint and from like people going back and forth to each other's sites and things like that, it's working. It's working, and still things to work on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like the amount of intentionality related to how to have that communications infrastructure so that people didn't feel like they were left out of, key details about their livelihood and their jobs and what was happening in the organization. Sounds like it paid off in big dividends to just actually have people stay engaged in the process and recognize they were helping to build something for this next phase of the organization.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned in the prior response something about the social enterprise and having to maybe invest more time and resources, but now it's paid off in big dividends. I recall from the interviews I did for the case study that some new funding from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office was a significant, investment into that social enterprise, Intervine. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about Intervine, what services you're providing through that social enterprise, and what the goals are, for like the social impact that you see coming from that line of work.
Sure. So, and just to back up a bit, when Hope was thinking about in 2013, kind of what the next phase of our growth was or should look like, we had kind of defined 3 things. We really, really wanted to stay New York centric, but expand to another borough where there was need for our services and where people couldn't easily get to Brooklyn. And I think at that point in time, about between 15 and 20% of the people we served in Brooklyn were coming from the Bronx, but we realized that like we could have more of an impact if we had a site or a program there. We also were really interested in adding a sector to the kinds of training that we were doing. So we had a general work readiness training and we had a food sector. And we were interested in doing another sector because sector-based work was really appealing. It's a great way to engage employers and get feedback from them on what your training should look like. So you're preparing people specifically for a sector. And so we were interested in another sector. And then thirdly, as we thought about diversifying funding, we really, the idea of a social enterprise appealed to us because it is a way to provide work for the people you're serving while they're in job search mode but need some money in their pockets, or if they lose their job and they're looking for another one but need some money in their pockets. So this idea of social enterprise was very appealing to both board and senior staff. And so when Sustainable South Bronx approached us with the idea of a partnership, they were in another borough, being the Bronx. They had another sector-based training program, green jobs, green construction, green maintenance, and they had a social enterprise. And so all those 3 factors were kind of like, check, check, check. This is really exciting and interesting to us. And then the social enterprise specifically, it started out as a way, as I said, to kind of provide graduates who were job searching or in between jobs with some money in their pockets. And that was kind of it. And we wanted to expand it and get more contracts to do more green work, whether it was installing or maintaining green roofs, whether it was doing horticultural work, planting trees, planting bulbs, maintaining greenways. So we were interested in doing more of that type of work and earning money to then put back in the community through the people we serve. And so that was the goal of it. When the Manhattan District Attorney's Office put out an RFP to support social enterprises, we read through it and we're like, wow, they would be giving a 3-year investment to subsidize social enterprise wages and the resources needed to do business development, so that we could really expand it and take it to the next level. And so we are in year 1 of a $1.8 million investment over 3 years from the Manhattan DA's office. And it has allowed us to not only look at our social enterprise for our graduates, but actually start a new program stream where 45 people a year, are coming into our Intervine program directly, not having graduated from any of our other programs, and getting the soft skills training, the hard skills training, and then doing real work. And we've expanded the business lines to not only be installing and maintaining green rooftops or doing horticultural work. We are now doing painting. So it's less dependent on the season. We do painting in affordable housing units. We do solar installation and maintenance. So we're really thinking about the business lines that can help people get money in their pockets, help us get contracts, but also develop transferable skills so people are leaving Intervine with skill sets that help them build sustainable careers.
Wow. So this makes me think, since Intervine has continued to grow and develop, or blossom, that since you were able to develop that new line of business from Intervine, I'm wondering about other instances where you've been able, you had mentioned something when we spoke for the case study about being able to innovate more because you have more resources. And so I'm curious, well, you mentioned like being more innovative and more strategic with the benefit of more resources. And I'm curious about other examples where post-merger, you've been more innovative in the work that Hope is doing.
Sure. So yeah, and when I say that to people all the time, I think when you are a nonprofit of a certain size, even when you're not intending to be, you often focus in more of like a survival mode. And you're thinking about like, okay, where is payroll coming from? How can I do more for less? How can I do more for less? And as somebody said recently, I said, the extension of doing more for less is doing something for nothing. And when I think you're in a small nonprofit, you kind of get into that mode a little bit. So when you hit a certain amount, you are able to start investing in infrastructure more and developing kind of the systems and infrastructure to be more thoughtful and more strategic, not only for the short term, but for the longer term. And so both on kind of like a management level, we've been able to invest in, for example, like the first 6 years that I was executive director, I was also kind of / chief program officer. And there's lots of amazing program staff, but from like thinking about strategically the program, I was it. We actually had enough resources a year ago to hire a chief program officer. And so that was wonderful. And we hired somebody who is bringing new thoughts and new systems and new processes and adding so much value to our programs. We were able to think about how we serve lots and lots of people who struggle in some way, shape, or form with mental health issues. And we were able to spend some time applying for funding to support building a work wellness and mental health component in our program. And we actually were fortunate enough to be one of 14 nonprofits in New York City to win a grant through the Mayor's Fund to Advance New York. And that money has allowed us to embed mental health services in every single one of our programs. So we run 5 program streams, 5 different distinct programs, and throughout all of them, we serve about 485 people each year. And now every single person gets touched by, and all of our staff members get touched by learning psychoeducation, learning mindfulness. All of our staff are trained in motivational interviewing and mental health first aid. So being innovative about self-care for staff and work wellness for the people we serve has been wonderful. Also thinking more about how we train the people that are giving the training to the people that we serve. And so we do more staff training. We've done trauma-informed care. We've done de-escalation training. And then we've also done Salesforce training. And so building the skill sets of our own workforce so that we're better serving the people that come to us we have a lot more freedom now to do things like that.
Hmm. Wow, I'm really struck by the investment related to mental health and wellness, because I think it's such an important need, but so many organizations don't fund it, don't make it a priority, and the people that are doing the work, I think you need to invest in people's mental health and well-being. So kudos to you for that. So my last question for you, you've laid out a number of things that Hope has been doing as far as workforce development, the social enterprise, helping people move, develop themselves so that they can move from employment to long-term employment with the transferable skills that they're getting. And I'm wondering how you define organizational success and whether or not you're achieving it.
It's such a great question. So, I mean, we define organizational success in a lot of ways. And we've always been data driven. We've always been outcomes oriented. So we measure, how many people enroll in our program, how many people complete our program, what wages they get, are their jobs full-time or part-time, are they still working a year later? And so all of those kind of data points are really important to us. The most important kind of being, are you still working 1 year later? Because working for a year is an indication of that you're more likely to stick with the labor market for a lifetime. And so we really focus on getting people to that year. And so from a metric standpoint, it's all about that. But then there's also the heart of why we do what we do. And we want to make sure we're doing it with high quality services. So it's not just a numbers game where it's okay, if this year we're serving 485, next year let's serve 515, and next year, it's about how do we continue to scale, because I believe we have a program model that works, and if it works, we want to help impact more lives and lift more people out of poverty and into sustainable careers. But how do we do that in a thoughtful way that's maintaining the quality of our services? And so for me, I'll never say we've achieved organizational success, because to me, organizational success means being committed to continuous improvement. And at Hope, every day in and day out, people are working hard to serve those that are coming through our doors today, but also being thoughtful about how we serve those that'll be coming through our door tomorrow or next year or in a decade. And obviously, we hope that the world changes and services like ours aren't even, necessarily needed in the way we do. They're needed today. But we recognize right now there is lots of people who, for many different reasons, don't get the opportunity to build their own career path without kind of the support that a place like Hope offers. And so we're really proud to do that today, and then continue to improve to meet the needs of tomorrow.
Awesome. So as we shift to wrapping up, I'm wondering if there's anything that I didn't ask you that you would like to share as additional food for thought to build from the case study that we prepared.
I think that, you guys did a great job on the case study, and we're really proud of what it reflects about the thoughtfulness that not only the staff teams and the board teams put into it, but this really involved our funders, and we brought our joint funders in, including Robin Hood Foundation, very early on in the process to help us navigate it. So for folks, if people that are watching this are thinking about doing this, I would say think very carefully about who your stakeholders are, and similar internally being really strong about communication. Talk to people and let people know what's going on so there are no surprises externally also. And then I think from a personal point of view, for me, this was a dream come true personally. I had been an environmental major in college. I had been a Peace Corps volunteer who did environmental education in the 90s. And then came back and thought, wow, it's really hard to get people to care about the environment when they are struggling to put food on their table and support their families. And so I shifted my own personal kind of career focus and career trajectory to workforce development. And I spent, 12 to 15 years doing workforce development with like still loving the environment kind of in the background, but it wasn't front and center. And so what this allowed is now we are responsible for running workforce development programs that 3 of our 5 work readiness programs have a green element to them, have an environmental element. So we are training people and putting money in people's pockets so they can provide for their families, while they're also gaining the skills to give back to their community and make New York City's environment cleaner, greener, more energy efficient. And I say this to say kind of like, this for me is like, personally, I'm so proud of it. And when people go through this, it takes so much time and it takes so much energy. And so you want to make sure like it's fulfilling personally. And I really am so proud of the work that we have achieved, and the way that we have thoughtfully interwoven kind of green work and workforce development.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making time to chat with me. Great. I hope that 2019 exceeds your and Hope's expectations. And we will touch base with you.
That would be awesome. Makiyah, thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Take care.
Bye.